Well, Jeff here with co-host Chip.
Yeah.
What is going on, Chip? Tonight we have a special guest with us, Charlie Silver, CEO of Permission.io. And tonight's show is brought to you by Permission.io. And we're so excited to have Charlie on. Charlie, welcome to the show. It's really a pleasure to have you here tonight.
Jeff, Chip, pleasure's all mine.
Are we ready to
That's
get this
awesome.
kicked off?
We're going to.
Welcome to On the Chain.
All right. Hey, it's great. This is awesome. It looks like Papa Huddle's on as well. My dad's on watching tonight. So, hey, Dad.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And also, before we get started, Jeff, I just want to say, guys, send the positive vibes. My dad's going to surgery, so I'll be out of commission all day long tomorrow, but he's got to go in for something. I'm going to be taking him, and, just send the positive vibes, man.
It's a positive thoughts to your dad, Chip.
All right. Right on. Let's get it. Let's get into some blockchain stuff. So, Charlie Silver, good to have you back on the show. And if you guys don't know, of course, we are quite fond of Permission.io. And Charlie, why don't you just, for our audience, go into a little bit, kind of want to find out what was the impetus behind the whole idea of Permission.io? Like, how did you arrive at this data model? How did we get here?
Well, I've been in this business for 20 years. I started a company in the early internet era called Real Age. You guys all know Dr. Oz, Mehmet Oz. He was my partner. That's where he got his media start, was with Real Age. And what Real Age was, it was a health questionnaire that asked you everything about your health and wellness. And we collected more data about people than anybody could possibly imagine. And then we would ask permission if you would like to receive products and services that can make your real age younger. So I knew the power of data collection and then people volunteering to receive information. And our ROI for advertisers, which were primarily the big pharmaceutical companies, was off the charts. We were charging $300-400 CPMs when people were charging $5 CPMs. And because when you combine permission, data, and a true consent and opt-in, that's the formula. That's the handshake. And so I built that business with Dr. Oz. We sold it for over $100 million to Hearst. And then I started investing in companies, and I got involved with this deep tech company, which is the foundation of Permission. And it was exactly how not to do a startup. It was a technology in search of a business model, but it was fantastic technology. It was how data can become mathematics. Anyway, I was an investor, but there were a bunch of academics, and I took over as CEO. And that's when I pivoted the company. I said, you know what? Blockchain crypto is the future. Let's use crypto to drive a whole new ad model where people give consent, give permission, and truly opt in to sharing their data. And to do that, they have to be rewarded. And that's where we're at. That's how I came here.
That's really interesting. So, as we're now, you're here, you're in blockchain, and we're starting to see, a lot of momentum here, moving away from brick and mortars on the financial institution, banking perspective, retail perspective, but data seems to be a very online centric controlled mechanism right now by some of the biggest players. How do you separate from that? I mean, to me, that's like the biggest issue. We talk about decentralization, DeFi, and decentralization being the freedom, back to the people financially, but yet our data is still controlled by some of these big players. Now, how do we get that away from them? How do we get it back and move forward with a platform like Permission or beyond? What do you see? What's your vision? What is that starting to look like?
Well, we all talk about Web 3.0, right? What is Web 3.0? WWW, I call it the win-win web. It's where what really will define Web 3.0 is how data is handled. You know, the Web 2, which is what we're moving from, Google, Facebook, Twitter, you know, these massive platforms, they control all the data, okay? Web 3.0, which what's going to define it, is that individuals are in control of their data. We're already seeing it. And by the way, Apple, biggest company in the world, they have embraced the California Consumer Privacy Act more than any company in the world. They're positioning Apple as the way to control your data. But permission, there will be hundreds of other companies that are involved in this ecosystem that allows individuals to control their data. And it's going to be in all kinds of contexts, not just digital advertising, your health data, your financial data. It's endless. And I really think that a whole new ecosystem will be built all around this. And look, data is the most valuable commodity in the world. Google, it's worth 1.8 trillion. 1.8 trillion. Grasp that. They have more data about billions of people than anybody could possibly imagine. That's what drives the value. Same with Facebook, worth 1 trillion. It's all about the data. And it's time for individuals to get their cut. And that's what our mission is all about.
It's amazing. And you brought up some interesting points. So it's not just you're browsing around the internet and, hey, you watch a video, you see some ads. You're talking about your financial data and your health data. You know, to me, that's really exciting, you know, because from a health perspective, and there's some other companies that kind of dabbled in the idea of how can we reward people to stay healthy? How do you get that momentum? You know, people are engaged instead of, you know, going to the doctor and collecting all sorts of pharmaceuticals to stay alive. They're eating healthy, they're exercising, they're monitoring their health progress. How do you further monetize that? How do you, you know, so if you're going to now be in control of your health data, you know, you bring this up, how do you extrapolate from that? You know, how does someone now get to earn from that? Or
well, we're creating that ecosystem. I mean, we're going to be launching a mobile app that envisions all of this. You know, the more data that you're willing to share, the more you can earn. If you're super healthy and, you know, you want to share that information, let insurance companies bid for your business, right?
Makes sense. Makes sense. But Charlie, I want to go back to the Apple thing. So, you know, you're not going to find a bigger Apple fan here than right here. I'm always talking about Apple, but I have to say this
first in line.
The latest faux pas with Apple, I think they just destroyed the mother lode, the mothership, because they're allowing the government, there's going to be able to scan your private photos, and they're comparing that against a list of missing children or trafficked children. And that's a major violation of privacy. I understand it's always done with the intent. Well, we have a good intent because it's for the betterment of that. But then who's the you know, in a centralized society where centralized companies making these decisions, they're really picking winners and losers, right? They get to choose. And the thing I like about Web 3.0 is you can't be deplatformed, right? You can't be decentralized. Now, out of curiosity, I'm just to get your thought on Twitter, they started up to something called Blue Sky. Blue Sky is their side project and team to decentralize Twitter. And I'm curious if they can truly decentralize it, because that would mean you can't really ban anybody.
Well, look, decentralization is, you know, a trend that's firmly in place. Look, all you got to do is look at what's going on in Afghanistan to see the failure of centralization. I mean, a bunch of guys sitting in a room making all kinds of cuckoo decisions about going to war. I mean, the bigger the organization, the more centralized, the more stupid it becomes. Whether it's the Federal Reserve Bank, I mean, you know, whether it was the USSR or the British Empire, And, you got to think about China, the USA, what really is the future, right? And decentralization is a trend that's firmly in place. And being involved in the crypto industry is so exciting because it's the reason to be optimistic about the world, But this is a long-term historical trend. It's not going to happen in 1 year or 10 years. This is a 100-year trend,
That it makes a big difference too, because you look around the world and we look at the impact it has on people. So cryptocurrency, for the first time ever, we're seeing people in countries around the world that have never engaged in investing. There's people in the United States that have never invested in their future. They've never bought stock. They never put money into savings. They live paycheck to paycheck, day to day. Now, all of a sudden, they have this option where they can put a fractional amount of money into savings, into something that is generating and building into this, brand new asset class. Like you said, it's the future. This is the direction things are moving in. They're moving in this decentralized direction. Now, with Ask, and the one thing that's really cool about Ask and permission.io is that there's many people out there that have yet to even engage in the cryptocurrency experience. So what is it? 1% of the population, I don't know the exact, that have actually started to invest in cryptocurrency and get actively involved. Permission.io, and as you begin to expand that ecosystem, is allowing people to participate without participating yet. They get to take advantage all of a sudden. It's really interesting.
Well, that's exactly right. And people have this asset that they don't even know they have, which is their data, and it's an asset that, we're allowing people to capitalize upon. And very soon, we're going to allow advertisers, and this is going to be core to our ecosystem, to run ads on the open web, not just in the permission walled garden, on the open web, and offer ASK. People will click, what's ASK? Oh, it's the cryptocurrency of permission. Click here to claim it now. And, we're going to give them the ability to open a MetaMask wallet and claim their ASK. And Nike or Microsoft, big advertisers, are going to build their own lists of people who opt in and share their data. And that's the future,
Yeah.
And that's the next big phase of our project.
Go ahead. Sorry, Charlie. I didn't interrupt. I wasn't sure when you were finishing there, but one of the things that people are doing this now, they just don't know it. Their data is already out there with the big networks. They're already there, but they're just clueless in the fact that they're not taking control of their own data.
Well, that's what we're all about. As soon as people start seeing ads with Ask, they're gonna recognize what this is. And imagine 2023 Super Bowl ad. You want my data? Ask me. Ask me. You gotta ask me. And that means give me some ask.
Sounds like a hint there, Charlie, like a pretty strong hint there. I'm like, let me see something there. So 2023, the Super Bowl is in January. So we're talking about maybe 16, 18 months away, something like that. If we're talking 2022 or 23.
2023 Super Bowl ad.
I love that. Yeah, and it's about time people started taking control of their own data. So because when we get to talk to someone of your caliber, CEO has started a project, is looking to change the way how data is handled, bringing it back to we the people. What is your thought about what's happening in the regulation space? Now, recently they had this giant boondoggle of a bill, and one senator held it up, but for 3 days, that was parked because the crypto community was loud. And I think everybody heard in Congress what was going on, and they said, hey, whoa, you slipped this in the middle of the night. We're not so happy about it. What are your thoughts about where regulation is now? What's going on in this bill? If they try to insert that legislation, do you think the House is going to stave it off? What are your thoughts about what's happening with that bill and just in general, the whole idea of um, regulation?
Well, okay. I'm
A
a
lot,
total free market guy to begin with. But the fact is, we live in the United States. Regulation is just a fact of life. We need positive regulation for crypto to really go mainstream, right? We
Yes.
need positive regulation. I'm actually optimistic. If you're a politician, if you're a congressman, you get more votes by being pro crypto than being anti crypto. So it's just a simple math. That's why I'm optimistic that we may get something positive in this bill. Look at, you don't want to know how, there's two things you don't want to know how they work, right? This is a famous quote: sausage and laws, right? If people really knew how laws were made, there'd be a revolution. But politicians care about one thing: more votes. And my simple logic is they get more votes by being pro crypto than anti crypto. And it was amazing to see the community. I was on the phone calling senators. I spent an hour on the phone calling. And so were tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people. And there was an incredible community outreach. And believe me, the House knows that. So I'm somewhat optimistic.
Yeah, it's really amazing, and so we look at the infrastructure bill, $1.3 trillion. We know only a fraction of that is going to real infrastructure. The crypto gets snuck in, and we look at that and we're all, at first glance, you're like, oh my God, it's going to be devastating. But then the golden goose that kind of came out of all this is, like you just said, all of a sudden the senators have this awakening, right? First of all, Ted Cruz said there's probably not even 5 people in the room that know anything about cryptocurrency. Now, not only do they know about it, they don't know maybe in depth, but now all of a sudden every senator had their phones ringing off the hooks, voicemails full. I think they crashed the phone systems at one point. Every one of those 100 senators has now been involved in a discussion over cryptocurrency. And the one thing that they completely ignored is the fact that the crypto community is extremely passionate, extremely outspoken, and there's a ton of money in the crypto community. And that ton of money is going to go towards certain elected representatives that are then going to support the crypto development. Now it's sitting in the House, and the House has been sitting on bills like the Token Taxonomy Act for how long? This is the third time around that they've sat on it and ignored it. It's super impressive. Now, as we move forward, what are your thoughts on this regulatory landscape?
Well, we need it. I mean, we need to have clear regulations. I mean, we have to. I mean, and look at institutions are just dipping their toe in the water with crypto. We get clear regulation. Oh my God, the dam's going to break. I mean, everybody's going to, what do we have? A total market cap of 2 trillion of all crypto. I mean, I could see it going up 10x, boom, with clear regulation. And so we need it. We absolutely need it. And, and I'm optimistic. I mean, it's not going to be perfect, but as long as there's something that's livable that we can live with, it's what's really going to make it go mainstream.
Yeah, and that's why they have to dust off that token taxonomy, because I think, in a bipartisan fashion, had Warren Davidson, you had Darren Soto, Republican and Democrat coming together. You had sponsorship on both sides. I mean, that's something, and Jeff alluded to it a few minutes ago, been in 3 years. I mean, it's been introduced multiple times, and they're like, let's pass a bill that says, let's talk about crypto. We'll create a committee and we'll have more conversations. Hey, how about if you take that out of committee, put it on the floor for a vote? Now put it on the floor for a vote now that you have everybody in the House being hammered. But I wanted to get to this question right here from Naomi Harrison. She says, for Charlie, what is the difference between permission and the Brave browser?
Well, listen, I'm a big fan of Brave. They were an early leader in our space. they're all about privacy, right? And the difference between permission and Brave is how we treat data. Brave doesn't collect data, right? We treat data as an asset and allow individuals to monetize that asset. Brave, that's not Brave's business. Brave allows you to surf the internet privately. We're like, no. Data has huge amount of value. Monetize it, earn from it. So that's the big difference in how we do data.
That's interesting. That gives you a choice. You want to browse privately and not engage, you can do that. You want to monetize your data and experience making money from that asset, you can do that too. This decentralization is opening up a lot of interesting opportunities.
But I'm streaming right now in a Brave browser with that's where my permission plugin is right there. It's in Brave. So, you can do both. But again, the thing is I want to share my data when I want to share it and how I choose to share it. I just don't want big tech monetizing off my back without my knowledge, because they're making, like you said, trillions of dollars. They're making a lot of money, at least into the multi-billions of dollars, and stuff that's being aggregated all over the. Although I'm guessing that some other people in the world have our data as well, but they're not necessarily monetizing from it. Three little letters pop up in my head. One begins with a C and one ends with the CP. So, there's always that potential. But when we're talking about monetization, this model, like, I want to hear more about the app, because to me, the app, I love apps. I'm a big fan of apps. Like, when I'm on the app, so what's the vision for the app? We go ahead and download it. It's an Android, iOS thing. We download it. What kind of things we'll be able to do on the app itself?
Well, first it will be a vehicle to store your crypto, transfer, trade it, all of that functionality. But there's no innovation there. That exists in multiple ways. But it's all about, what am I shopping for? I'm looking for a new Toyota truck. You type that in the permission app, boom, you get dozens of ads of Toyota dealers and used car dealers that are offering you ASK to look at their ad. That's the vision. I'm looking for a barbecue. Boom. You get ads, that are people selling barbecues. I'm looking for life insurance. Boom. That's the vision of the app, and that's where it's all going. It's permission Google. I mean, you get those ads on Google, but now you'll get ads that pay you for your, engagement and sharing your data.
That's interesting. How do you think Google is going to respond?
Well, look, we're actually have a lot of partnership with Google. Google is looking at us as kind of like a, experiment,
Gotcha.
I hate to say this, but we're in bed with Google in a number of ways. They had to approve our browser extension. Right. Okay. They had to approve it. We're connected to the Google Ad Exchange programmatically. They had to approve it. So we show ads so when you bid for ads on Google, it can go onto our ecosystem. So we're connected to Google that way. We're going to make a big announcement next week, and I'm giving your audience a little preview. You can host a permission blockchain node in the Google Cloud. You can go to the Google Cloud and host a permission blockchain node. And we're only one of a handful of blockchain companies that Google allows that for. So we have 4 or 5 different business relationships with Google. So Google's looking at us and they're watching us, and we're no threat to Google at this point. And I mean, we could be doing $20 billion of revenue and we're still no threat to Google. I mean, they're a Goliath. Like, they're the most powerful company in the history of capitalism by far. And anyway, it's interesting. They are definitely looking at us and keeping an eye on us to see, how it plays out.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, it's just like anything else. You look at other cryptocurrencies, for example, XRP, it's like, look, they work with banks, you work with traditional ecosystems, but, there's always enough room for choice, right? There's always enough room for people to choose for themselves. You give them enough flavors, people choose a flavor they like, and then there's some of the flavors they just they're not that popular, like I don't know, pecan. I don't know, maybe whatever it is. I mean, I always look at some of these oatmeals that my wife gets, and there's some kooky flavors, and I'm like, what's that all about? I try it, it's like, that just doesn't work for me. But if you have choice, it's your data, you want to be able to monetize it. It's going to be interesting. I want to learn a little bit more about, well, when you guys roll this out, the whole running a node in the Google Cloud, that's going to be that's interesting. So how does that work if you're able to run a node? Like, for example, if On the Chain wanted to run a node, what would that look like?
Well, you just go to the Google Cloud store. It's the GCP, the Google Cloud Platform Store. You search blockchain node. You'll see permission. You click, I want to run a node. I want to be part of the permission ecosystem and host a permission blockchain node. And you do that because you just want to participate in our ecosystem.
And you have a way to earn from that too, as well, like somehow.
Yeah, it's not a lot at this point, but it's more about being just part of our ecosystem.
Gotcha. Makes sense. Maybe in the future, you never know. It's always possible. Because I know a lot of nodes use the nodes to really decentralize themselves a little bit more, so that it's off network, and that's how it becomes sort of decentralized. But so yeah, it doesn't really take much to know. I mean, I definitely think we should definitely do that, something like that. Run the node. It'll be available when, like coming up, like in the next.
You can go there right now and do it.
Oh, you can. Okay, good.
Yeah.
We'll go through that. We'll find the experience of setting up an Ask node. That'll be interesting.
Yeah,
Part of it, man. Part of the ecosystem.
It'd be part of the ecosystem. So we talked a little bit about the infrastructure of crypto, some of the regulatory hurdles that crypto is kind of has to go through. What are your thoughts on what is going on right now with the SEC? SEC v. Ripple. Ripple, it's like one of the biggest cases in history.
What
are your thoughts on this?
I'm not a legal, I'm not, there are specific, these lawsuits have, focus on very technical legal issues, and I'm not a technical securities lawyer. So I really can't comment intelligently on that lawsuit. I just hope what comes out of it is positive regulation. I mean, that's really, I hope there's some settlement and some case law that really defines what's a currency, what's a utility, and what's a security. So, I'm just hoping clear definition comes out of it.
Yeah, and that's really significant. And then you have kind of the battle right now between the SEC and the CFTC, kind of trying to figure it out. And it's I find it interesting that other countries have reached that decision point a lot faster than the U.S.
Yeah, well, the U.S. is this behemoth. I mean, it's just this. There's so many competing interests, not just from, private enterprise to government, but it's within government. There's just massive competing interests. And so it's going to take a little while to shake out. I'm optimistic that the U.S. doesn't commit suicide. I mean, the dollar devaluation is baked in the cake. Everybody knows that the fiat currencies always fail. The dollar's on a path to massive devaluation. And that just, with this it's not just this administration, it's just one after the other. The debt and the spending just pile up and pile up and pile up. The contingencies, the contingent liabilities just keep continuing piling up and piling up. And, there's just this path to dollar destruction. So crypto is the answer for people to be able to save and not get destroyed by inflation. And I think people care about that, and even in government. And so that's why I'm optimistic.
Yeah, I think we are, as a community, a crypto community, I think we are optimistic. But to take it a little bit further, the Federal Reserve kind of came in a dubious fashion. Three of the biggest opponents just happened to be riding on the Titanic and just happened to go away. And in the middle of the night on 1913, they sort of pushed this puppy through and in Congress and kind of like a session. And then we lived with it for a long time until Nixon, which just hit the 50th anniversary of taking us off the gold standard. And that's a long time to be on this petrodollar. I mean, to make it 50 years out. But the trouble that I have is the whole Federal Reserve has never been audited. We don't really know what the balance sheet looks like. We don't really know where the interests lie. We don't know much about it. Yet they're this independent organization, and I don't think any government truly has its sovereignty if you have a central bank. Now the central bank's answers are CBDCs, central bank digital currencies. The very first word is central, which is
Right.
like probably the first problem. So they think if they go ahead and do something that's digital, they create a digital version of the fiat. They call it a central banker's coin, right? And they say, like, well, is it blockchain? Oh, no, it's not. Is it decentralized? No, it's centralized. So they think this is the answer. What is your thought? How do you think the CBDCs are going to shake out, just long term? And is the trend going to continue where you're going to see almost every major country release some version of their own CBDC?
Well, probably. I mean, but it's still a fiat currency. It's still government, currency with no transparency, no rules and governance that anybody understands. And so it still has all the characteristics of fiat currency. It's now just digital, so it's totally trackable. I mean, I don't know who's going to want to use it. I mean, look at prior to the Federal Reserve, money had to compete. If I wanted to sell my business to them, am I going to sell it in Wells Fargo notes or Bank of America notes? Well, I like Wells Fargo notes better. I like the way they, operate their business, and I want Wells Fargo notes. I mean, that's where we're going back. Money has to compete, and for trust and transparency, and it's happening right now. I mean, the dollar's on a path to destruction, like every fiat currency in the history of mankind, and there's nothing different. And once politicians recognize they can print their way for votes, it's like a snowball rolling down the mountain until it breaks.
You see, and it's interesting, so as we move in this direction of DeFi, crypto, blockchain, and we're seeing that the governments are pushing back to an extent, right? They want to regulate, over-regulate, like Chip is bringing up the CBDCs. There was an interesting article back in February from the Bank of Korea that said CBDCs are basically fiat. They're not digital assets, and they have all the same problematic equations that regular fiat does. There's no difference. But one of the areas that that I'm looking forward to is putting this mechanism in place of the voting infrastructure. So, or the auditing infrastructure of these government bodies. And so I know they're going to be extremely resistant to it. And like you said, this isn't something that's going to develop over a year or 10 years. It's 100 years in the making. But we're moving and migrating in that kind of direction. Right now, the powers that be are looking at the individuals and finding mechanisms and ways to track individuals and social score individuals. Imagine if we can social score governments or government representatives, or the next time you go in to vote, you're voting on the blockchain. One person, one vote, that's it. And there's no other ambiguity to it. There's no paper ballots. And if you vote on the computer, you do a thumbprint, you enter in on your blockchain credentials, that's it. You voted, you're never voting again. For that election cycle. What are your, because that to me fits kind of into the same permission narrative, where you're taking your data, right? And now you're controlling it beyond. Now I'm controlling the outcome of elections because it's my data. I want to make sure everyone else is using their data fairly as well. What are your thoughts on that development into the blockchain?
Oh, listen, what blockchains are amazing for transactions, right? They're immutable, they're auditable, they're transparent. And yeah, voting is a perfect use case for blockchain. And, hopefully we get there. And blockchains are perfect for commercial transactions because, again, they're transparent, auditable, immutable. And, which is the opposite of how fiat currency works, which is opaque. It totally lacks transparency. Nobody knows where it's coming from and, how much is being really created and distributed. So, yeah, voting is great. There's all kinds of great use cases. So, there's a lot of dark stuff going on in the world, but there's a lot of positive stuff. And I'm an optimist. I got to be an optimist. So,
right there with you. I think Jeff and I are really too. And I think that the whole idea of, we always say that crypto is bringing the world together. I mean, if there's one thing, a brand new asset class, 400 or 500 years, that is bringing people together, and Jeff brings this up all the time. There's people that are investing for the first time in their life because they're excited about it. They think they're excited about, bonds or derivatives or stocks. They got excited about cryptocurrency. It's like in the youth, and it really spans across all age groups. I mean, we look at who watches this show. It's kids younger than 20, and it's people older than 70. It spans the whole entire spectrum. It's the one thing that's just wide open. But a question I have for you: do you think that we will see? Let's just give it 5 years. In the next 5 years, that a country will choose to be run as a DAO, which is a decentralized autonomous organization, where the people are really the strongest. There's no one centralized group. Because, I mean, the whole idea of sending someone, a senator, having 2 per state, they're supposed to represent us. But when you're in office for 40 or 50 years, like, well, it's some old club you go to and you know better and you start getting a big head. You think you know what's going on. A DAO is a scenario where it really truly could potentially bring the power back to we the people. People really get to choose how it works because they're represented, because they're part of it. What are your thoughts? Do you think that could ever happen, or do you think that's just some utopian sort of a dream?
No, I think it absolutely is the future. When you think about central nation states, it's only a 200-year phenomenon. Look at Europe. It wasn't until the 1840s or 1850s. I mean, Germany was 15 different provinces. So was Italy. Most of Eastern Europe, it was all these small little, I don't know, each country, each culture has its own name for, their different counties or different communities. But it was only in the mid-19th century that it was brought together as nation states. I mean, the Middle East, these countries, Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, they make no sense as countries. They're different communities that, were, the British Empire, they drew the borders and says, okay, now you're a country. Same with Africa, same with Latin America. Nation states in many places make no sense. The United States was really the only place that made sense because it was based on a set of principles. But those principles are being discarded. And, I see the United States, I do not see it staying centralized for, in 100 years from now. I do not see it. It's not it makes no sense. I mean, what does Texas have in common with California? I mean, nothing. I mean, they're like totally different places.
Or Florida.
Or Florida, right.
By the way, where are you coming to us from today?
I'm in California.
I knew it.
But you know what? I am a frustrated Californian. And
you haven't gone to Texas yet, or left for Florida or some other state. I see a lot of people leaving the state. There's a lot of people heading to Texas because of the low taxation and, well, a lot of things in general. But I think, but you're in Southern California, right?
I am. And, I'm in.
It's beautiful down there, though.
It is beautiful. And the weather's, the best in the world. And,
really
but you know what? It's the nanny state has gotten so oppressive that, you know, my wife and I, we talk every day about where we're going to go. So
A lot of great places.
There's a lot of places to choose from. Yeah, there's a lot of places. Well, it's funny because I see some people leaving, you know, San Francisco. Michael Arrington, he was like real vocal about it towards the end of 2020, where he was like, I can't take it anymore. I love the city. I can't do it. I'm moving to Miami. So he like packed up, left, moved to Miami. He's like, just like that. It was like, you know, he lived there for such a long time and he wanted to go. And there's a lot, he's starting to see a lot of that. And that's where the founders and the framers of the US, what you're getting into was, it was really truly when the Constitution was drawn up, it was really the only constitution ever existed that told the government what it couldn't do, because this is what the power is granted to the people. And you're right, that's really being stressed right now and put to the stress test. But I'm curious to see that as we go on, if there's this upswell of people, because I see this everywhere. You almost are starting to see the blurred lines where you're seeing people uprising about this and that in crypto everywhere, except for where they have regulations, but they certainly don't want their freedoms infringed upon. And it doesn't matter whatever that looks like. It's a worldwide phenomenon. And it's again, it's another thing bringing the world together. So cryptocurrency, like you said, the blockchain itself, to me, they're always bringing in these nefarious actors. Like, you know, they'll always say, well, you know, there's this bad actor here and bad actor there. Bottom line is that more money laundering in the history of the world has happened in banks, right?
Oh yeah. I mean, you know what JP Morgan has paid in fines in the last 10 years? I think it's over 50 billion.
It's insane.
50 billion. You know, they do whatever the hell they want. They'll, you know, that
drug running too, right?
It's just the cost of doing business. You know, it's
well, they get the pass too. It's like, oh, you're a big bank. Wow, come on. You know, go ahead. We're all right.
It's really it's amazing, you know, what, you know, they are able to get away with. You know, it's the bigger lobbyists. It's, you know, the whole infrastructure is there to support that entity. And the pushback right now, the resistance to what we're seeing is this. It's a fragmentation of the old ways of doing things. And we're starting to see, you know, the first stage is the failure of the retail institutions. And it's amazing. I was reading an article, the top 15 or 20 retail groups that are closing. And it was amazing to see the number of stores that are being shut down. Starbucks shutting down something like 300 to 500 stores, you know. The ones that, you know, a year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, I say, hey, these guys are never going to go away, you know, but now we're starting to have an impact, you know, but now you're starting to see the banking infrastructure, the brick and mortars. They're starting to look inwards and say, hey, wait a minute, we can't get away with what we got away with before. The people are speaking. It's really, you know, it's such a change. And like you said, Charlie, you know, it's positive. You can't help but be positive about it because there's such great things going. And Chip mentioned crypto bringing the world together. We have that representation here on the chain. We have some of the smartest people in the YouTube crypto space. They come here and comment, you know, every single night with us, and they come from all over the world. This engagement. And, you know, I've been fortunate enough to travel to a lot of parts of the world. I've worked in a lot of parts of the world. I've worked with people on virtually every continent. And so I've had that engagement. And every time I traveled, it was amazing to see, you know, this camaraderie because people think the same way. Now we're starting to see this microcosm again in the crypto space. Everyone passionate about crypto, everyone passionate about moving forward, you know, with their life and investing in the betterment of their own life. You know, it's just, it makes a big impact. You know, where do you see at this point, you know, of this, you know, of the development of crypto at this point right now? What do you see the next steps are? You know, where are we going from here at this point? Yeah.
You know, look at people that have been in the industry for a few years. They think they've missed out on, you know, the big appreciation in Bitcoin or Ethereum or this coin or that one. We're just getting started. It is so early. It's just getting started. Look at technology continues to grow and accelerate. I mean, and technology accelerates a force of the universe, creative destruction. There's always, the status quo is always being destroyed. New things are being created, you know, for the better. I mean, it's just incredible. If you just think of the last 50 years, you know, how the world has changed and what the internet has done in just the last 20 years. And crypto is now, you know, the next big phase of creative destruction. And look at, I'm super optimistic about the world if we don't blow each other. You know, there's always massive threats and dark side, but I think technology is a force for good. It's a force for freedom. It's a force for individual rights. And, you know, these central authorities, like, I don't see China, you know, surviving. I just don't. I mean, you know, the current regime, I mean, maybe it'll last 20, 30 years. Who knows? But I just can't see it, you know.
Doesn't make sense, though. You're right. I mean, I do think so. You know, one of the things too, I mean, I've been lucky enough to travel too. And, you know, sometimes I've been by myself, sometimes I've been with a group of people. But I always remember I would always say to the cab driver, take me where the people hang out. I don't want to go where there's tourists. Take me somewhere where the people hang, you know, not the tourists. Take you there. You walk into a bar, pub, broken English. I mean, what I found all over the world is people are people and governments will government. They do their thing. And there's the bad actors that seem to it's always the few. And what people don't realize is we are the majority. We are a massive majority. And it's just the few. And this is where I see where you look at China, you can't control it all. I mean, it's not the Chinese people, it's the CCP. And it's the oppression by maybe 1%, 1.5%. And if you look at the numbers the people want their freedoms. They want to be able to do what they want to do. And you look at someone like Jeff brought it up the other night, Jack Ma, one of the big sensations, right? All of a sudden, no one knows where Jack is. He's on vacation. He no longer runs Alibaba and no one knows where he is. I mean, you get to a point of where you become the big ambassador, but then you become too outspoken. And one of the things I think we really have to do a better job of, and this is where I see decentralization, is the freedom of speech. You know, it's worked pretty well in this country. The greatest thing is when Trump was president, you can say Trump's a moron. When Biden's president, you can say Biden's a moron, right? And have the freedom to say that. You can't do that in some countries. So the decentralization and allowing more of these freedoms to be prevalent, it's going to get some kickback. And I think that they just started waking up. The central banks just started saying, we had one of the officials from one of the Thai national banks say, hey, if we don't get in this DeFi space today, we are going to be in trouble, because they see that it's going to outpace them and ultimately the potential of eliminating them. Do you see a lot of the big banks hanging around, or the Jeff always poses this question, do the banks buy the crypto space like they're starting to invest in $200, $300, $400 million? Or do you see them getting gobbled up by the crypto exchanges and the crypto space?
Well, some banks will fail, I mean, for sure, but some banks will be very nimble, and, you know, who knows who they are. I guarantee you there'll be, you know, if you take the top 15 banks in this country or in the world, you know, I'd say half will embrace crypto, probably issue their own crypto, and half won't. And, you know, but again, creative destruction is a force, and, you know, what determines it is human ingenuity. You know, who is out in front, who is willing to be willing to let certain aspects of their business fail and create new things. But it's very hard for institutions to pivot like that. So many of them will die. I mean, just look at any industry, whether the auto industry, every industry is constantly have, you know, the big leaders one decade are falling behind the next.
That's interesting. I mean, look at the automotive industry. That's a great point. not that many years ago, we saw two of the biggest auto giants of the world, General Motors and Chrysler, almost come to a grinding halt. Ford somehow escaped slightly unscathed, but General Motors went through a government bailout and buyout. Chrysler is now Fiat. Chrysler is no longer an American-owned company. It's now owned by Fiat. So you're right. You start seeing these changes. Then all of a sudden, you have this little guy, Elon Musk, that says, I'm going to take them on and I'm going to start building an electric vehicle. And everyone looked at him and said, you're crazy. You're never going to compete in the U.S. market against General Motors or Ford or Chrysler. And here he is, the talk of the world, Tesla. You know, it's a big household name now. Amazon, same thing. Started, you know, you're never going to be able to sell books online. Now look at Amazon is potentially one of the problematic companies in society. Went from, you know, you can't sell books and everyone trying to squash them to now dominating, you know, the retail space. The changes are so, you know, obvious. Sometimes, you know, you have to be very nimble, like you were saying, you know, to make these changes. And some of these banking institutions will be nimbler than others. But overall, these big entities like a big Amazon, a big General Motors, a big Chrysler, they don't move fast, and they do get crushed when they're up against, you know, some of the severities that are occurring. And it's interesting. We've had Alex Mashinsky on a number of times, and one of the things that he said on one of the shows was, you know, from this rubble, you know, all the titans of yesterday are not going to be the new titans of tomorrow. They're not going to be the same ones emerging. There's all new companies that are going to be leading the economic growth of the future, and it's exciting, and it all seems to be right here in the crypto space.
Yeah, no, crypto is a massive force of innovation, and the financial sector is just this massive sector, and it's all going to change. I mean, just how the internet, you know, technology destroyed, you know, media. I mean, think about it. I mean, all the media got disrupted, all of retail. I mean, and now finance and banking, and technology accelerates the creative, destructive forces. You know, it's cool. You know, we're lucky to be, you know, I wake up every day all excited, you know, be part of what, you know, this industry, you know, can offer. So.
Yeah, but today, Charlie, I got to tell you, something spooked me a little bit. I tweeted a video of a Boston Dynamics robots running an obstacle course, doing flips and jumps and stuff. And I'm like, and I said, imagine one of these chasing you down. Like, they can't run fast yet. And then somebody posted, well, battery will be their downfall. I'm like, yeah, until they're able to basically harness all this free energy that Tesla was talking about, because they took him out too, right? But I'm like, this thing is jumping and flipping. Maybe I'll throw it up here. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, this can potentially get scary. The whole AI component. Again, I'm wondering, do we have to keep a handle on that, or is that like just innovation moving forward? Should we fear it at all? Does it ever like just say, you know what, humans, turns out you're not that good. We might just have to take care of you, you know, do a little bit of whack job here. I don't know.
Again, there's always dark forces. I mean, think about nuclear bombs. I mean, you know, the planet can destroy itself, you know, pretty easily. I mean, a few idiots hitting the buttons and, you know, billions of people can perish. But again, I'm an optimist. I feel that technology is a force for good. I think humans ultimately are good and heroic, but there's still dark forces. I mean, it's always competing, but I think good beats evil all the time.
I always say that.
I agree with that 100%. Here's a question. I don't know if we've posed this question before to any of our guests, but I think it's definitely fitting right now. You're you know, an entrepreneur. You've been a builder your entire career. You've done some great things, and now you're you know, a builder in the crypto space. I'm sure that of all the people that listen to our channel, we definitely have some builders out there. We have some entrepreneurs out there. What kind of advice would you give to them right now? They're just thinking about a concept, a project, and they want to get it off the ground. What advice would you give them?
That's a very complicated question.
I know.
It's
not an easy question.
You got to have a certain mindset to want to be an entrepreneur. You got to be willing to battle. You got to be willing to take your punches and it's not for everybody. You got to be a fighter and you got to be commit. It's all about grit. At the end of the day, there's a great book by Angela Duckworth called Grit. And it hit home to me because that's what it takes more than anything. You're going to fail a lot more than you're going to succeed. And you just got to keep working through it. And, Thomas Edison said he failed, 1,000 times inventing the light bulb before, he invented the light bulb. And it's just, so much of it is a personality type, and you got to be have that grit and determination, and you got to ask yourself, "Am I up for that?" So, because you're going to get punched in the stomach and in the face a lot, and you got to take it and just come back.
That is the truth. You do get punched in the face and sometimes in the throat too. And that one stings. I got to be honest with you. I've had a couple of those, but I just want to throw this up there, Charlie. This is a robot right here.
It was out to torment everybody with this thing.
And you're like, okay, that's cool. He's jumping. Oh, and wait a minute, what the hell? And there goes another one. Here comes another robot running right behind him. My God, look at this thing. And you're like, that's not a big deal. But imagine when they can run as fast as a cheetah. And then he gets up here, runs on the box, it's just silly stuff. He just hopped over that.
Yeah.
Are you watching
Chip,
this?
I'll be impressed when they do the American Ninja Warrior course.
Well, I'm telling you. Look at that.
There
right
we
there.
go.
It is crazy.
Okay, that's something right there. I'm telling you. Wow. Anyway, listen, I cannot believe because we've already gone through an hour and it just sounds like feels like we just started. But, Charlie, I wanted to, thank you for not only coming on here, but, sharing your vision, sharing your depth of knowledge, and being a builder in the space. We love talking to builders. We love people that have a vision to change the status quo, to say, hey, your data, your rules, you figure out how to do it, and for doing that, you're gonna be able to monetize that. So, Jeff and I appreciate you coming on here, and I just want to say a big thank you. And also, too, we also appreciate you sponsoring On the Chain.
Well, the pleasure's all mine. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. Get the message out to millions of people, and you guys can do it.
Millions. I love millions. That. Right now, it's just thousands, but we'll get there, Charlie. We're pretty optimistic too. So
yeah. It's outstanding. Yeah, I want to say thank you to you as well, Charlie. It's definitely a pleasure having you on tonight. Want to thank all of our subscribers, all those that are on live with us tonight, the comments. I appreciate you all. And Charlie, I'll pass it over to you for a final thought, final word.
Come to permission.io, sign up, earn some ASK, become part of our project. We're just getting started. Download the browser extension, follow us on Twitter, permission.io, follow me, Permission CEO on Twitter, stay in touch. We got tons of exciting stuff that's coming down the pike. So become part of our project.
Nice. And also down below, you can see, you can follow Charlie in the description. Also, you can follow the website. And I just dropped the link in there. If you go to permission.io/on-the-chain, you will be able to earn some bonus ask. And also it helps the show out as well. So there you have it. And again, thanks for staying on. If you got a second, Jeff's going to take us out of here. And then we are going to stay on for a little bit extra. We'll wrap it up after that, if that works.
Sounds good.
All right. Good
awesome. Again, appreciate everybody. Hey, by the way, we do stream 6 days a week. Sunday through Thursday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tomorrow night, I can't believe it's already Wednesday, but we will be back with more great content right here on the chain. We're out.
See you on the next one.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.